everybody, welcome to tonight's episode of Café con Gas. I am so excited to be here with you this evening. We've been off for a couple of weeks. The studio was closed. I sought refuge in the mountains of Colorado for a week for Thanksgiving break, and now we're back and live with Café con Gas. If you're tuning in for the first time this evening, I am very, very excited. We have a special guest with us this evening, but I also wanted to share a little bit of what Café con Gas is about. Café con Gas was created when I lived down Western Ave before all of the sidewalk construction and renovation. It was creative for two reasons. I saw a lack of diversity in my own classroom and in the work that I was engaging. I'm also a Harvard Extension School journalism student, and I also wanted to do something and say voice. For a while, I was really afraid to speak up. As a Puerto Rican, I was just kind of taught to assimilate, go with the flow, get my work done. And then when I started taking classes and learning about the First Amendment, I learned that speaking is a right that I have. Freedom of speech is making the news a lot with the Paris climate change conference, and also recent protests across campuses for Black Lives Matter, and also most recently an additional protest by students on Harvard campus for sexual assault. It's been a really, really interesting past 2 weeks, so I'm really excited to be with you. And again, Café con Gas is live here from Cambridge Community Television. I'm so excited we're in the new studio, and we have some more space for guests. Again, Café con Gas is a show that brings dialogue alive on healing, arts, and diversity with occasional guests. Tonight we have Dr. Jonathan Jenkins joining us today. He's an author and psychologist. I'm very, very excited to speak with him. And before that, we're going to get to a couple different things. We're going to do our favorite thing, which is an emotional check-in. Again, something else that I wanted to do at Café con Gas, have a little tradition of emotional check-in. We're just going to bring right now as I cut, here we go, to Café con Gas. Live from Cambridge, emotional check-in. All right, so this is a practice I do on every single show. I want people to see that emotions, it's okay to talk about feelings, it's okay to talk about emotions on TV, and I also want to encourage people to practice their own. So I am feeling, we don't have picture-in-picture anymore in the new studio, that's okay, but I'll tell you what I'm feeling today. I am feeling really, really happy. I'm feeling slightly overwhelmed, and that's because I went to a dance workshop and I'm really, really sore, and I actually took a nap before today's show. Slightly overwhelmed, but really, really ecstatic and just excited to be here with you today. We have a lot in store. So on the topic of the news, I wanted to show you something that was really, really interesting to me. A gentleman called Charles Clymer, and this has about 2,129 shares. When I was thinking of what news events to prepare for this segment, there was just a lot to choose from, and I wanted to bring up the news coverage on Planned Parenthood. There was a lot of different types of coverage, and this was actually from New York Times. So the New York Times took this down, and there was a shooting at Planned Parenthood, and this is how the first step that the New York Times took to share this article, and that was suspect lived off the grid but left trail of disputes. This is an article by Julie Turkowitz, Richard Fawcett, Alec Blinder, and Benjamin Mueller. Acquaintances described Robert L. Deere Jr., who was arrested in a fatal rampage at Planned Parenthood Center in Colorado, as a gentle loner who occasionally unleashed violent acts towards women, towards neighbors and women that he knew. And this is a really interesting piece because later, and Gawker.com actually talked about this, and I'll bring up the article for you as well. But the New York Times decides to change the language of the shooter and actually not use the word gentle to describe him. And there has been a lot of discussion. He was not gentle at all. He wounded others. And also, according to recent news reports, there was a discussion on him being a sadist and also having multiple domestic violence calls from his wife. So to describe this gentleman as a gentle loner, but to describe a young African-American man such as Michael Brown as being aggressive obviously shows that the news has a problem. What I was shocked about is that the New York Times did not make an effort to send out an editor's note to actually explain to people why this change was being made. So this is really interesting. Personally, as a journalist, I also have there is a fear when you publish something, not a fear, but there's a slight, you gotta fact check your resources, but there's a fear that someone's not gonna like it, or secondly, that you could be corrected. Someone has a different point of view. Sometimes those corrections come as trolls. I recently had some Donald Trump enthusiasts troll my Facebook page and write a couple Facebook hateful comments. But the reactions take a couple different things. But when it comes to correctly reporting the news and actually taking a stand, I'm surprised that the New York Times did not do anything to take a stand. So that's what's going on for national coverage. And then most recently, we had the shootings in St. Bernardino, which had a very different tone, as being investigated as an act of terror. Something I also wanted to bring up, unfortunately, and this is for the Cambridge News, there's been 4 different Cambridge bomb threats. These threats, according to the woman who I was sitting next to when I was getting a manicure on Friday, so this is an undisclosed source, but according to her, there was 4 threats, and mostly they're guided towards the middle school, which is really interesting because you wonder why the middle school. We also have a place like Harvard. So at the end of the day, again, emotional check-in. Reading about this is really disturbing, but one of the things that we can do is take a deep breath. And something that I love to do, especially being just enjoying dance, is just like put my arms around me and I'm like, this is my space. Is there a terrorist in front of me right now? No. Is there a lot of fear and inertia and movement? Yes. Is this a time for change? Absolutely. But kind of just checking in with yourself and saying, how is this news affecting me? And also checking in with your friends. I've had a lot of really great conversations talking about the nature of Planned Parenthood, how Planned Parenthood gives a lot of medical sources for women, not just abortions. The abortion rate, the percentage that of abortions for Planned Parenthood is only 3%. So it's really unfortunate to see these acts of violence, but more so unfortunate to see the media not handle them correctly and then show people how to absorb a mistake, because journalists' commitment are to the truth. So that's it for national news this evening. For local news, I picked up something from the Harvard Crimson Facebook page, and just take a deep breath, get ready for this. A local staple, Yan Qing, closes their doors after 40 years. This was a really, really popular spot in the right on Mass Ave across the Iron Gates at Harvard. Fed a lot of students. Also, the gentleman and owner was really nice. So this kind of brings up, like, why is this closing? Is this closing because of increased rent? Is this closing because some food? We just don't know. So that's what's going on. And finally, in the name of healing arts and diversity, for arts, I wanted to bring up Jonathan's book in just a second. We're going to have him on shortly. And I was just going to encourage you to do one thing and share this with you. So I'm wearing this bracelet right here. And I'm wearing this because world champions Gabby and Sergio from Alma Latina in Mexico were coming to visit. I've talked a lot about salsa socials at Café con Gas, and there are 2 instructors that have come to teach lessons. So I went to their workshop yesterday. I'm feeling really good, but I'm feeling that burn. But I wanted to encourage you. I had a friend who supported me. She's I call her my adopted dance mom. And I have a really good friend, and she supports me through dance. But I wanted to just say, in the name of the arts, actually today, just pick a move, do something. If it's karate, dance, or whatever, find your own art, because I don't want to do any further delay in bringing in our guest, who I'm really, really excited to introduce to all of you. But I also wanted to say that I've been engaging in a lot of arts, and I'm just really feeling the difference and just really feeling expanded and strong. I think when you absorb all of the news, you can do it in a passive way, and it can really shock you. And I think it's really good to explore ways to become really embodied and grounded in your daily living. So I'm really excited. So we have a special guest this evening, and also author. Can I just say, like, my fantasy is to do Reading Rainbow, so like even introducing this book just brings me a smile on my face. This is called Wednesday Afternoons with Dr. Jonathan Jenkins, who's an assistant in psychiatry at Mass General. Graduated with a BS in Health Science and Psychology from Guilford College, and also obtained master and doctoral degrees in clinical psychology from the University of Denver Graduate School of Professional Psychology. I'm really, really excited to have Jonathan onto the show. A little bit about the author segment. He was born and raised in Natick, Massachusetts, and also fell in love with the Celtics and cookie dough ice cream. So I'm really excited to have Jonathan on. I'm going to welcome him without further ado, tonight's guest, Dr. Jonathan Jenkins. Hey.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to Café con Gas.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and how are you doing this evening? Can you do a little emotional check-in for us, or how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I was watching the Patriots game. We were behind when I left the house, so I'm a little nervous right now. I'm holding a little bit of tension in.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens.
Wonderful. So how are the Patriots doing this season?
They're doing well.
I'm a baseball fan. Okay.
Doing well, but they're not doing well right now.
Okay.
That's problematic.
So that causes. Do you find that the sports team invokes more anxiety or collective, like, how is the pulse of sports right now? Is it?
Pulse of sports in Boston is pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. We're on a little bit of an uptwig.
Okay.
So it's been great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So, author and psychologist, can you tell me a little bit about your work? I know you engage with both adult and children populations.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of support and services do you offer as a psychologist?
Sure. So at the hospital, I work with children and adolescents with a variety of issues and concerns and challenges. So that might be anything from depression or anxiety. It could be trauma related. It could be substance abuse related. So kind of a catch-all for anything that comes in. Not only do we work with them, but we also work with the family and the community partners. So that could be teachers, could be other medical professionals, could be DCF, could be Department of Mental Health. So that's kind of the MGH side. And then the private practice side is adults and children. A lot of the people I see are kind of 25 to 35, so young professionals, people entering what we call a quarter life crisis, and really trying to figure out what their identity is and how to move in the world with less resistance and more success.
And so, in what brought you into psychology, and how did you first get into psychology?
I think it was really had to do with having an interest in the medical profession in general, but not necessarily being all that excited about blood. And getting a little bit dizzy when I saw blood. So I figured, how could I have the bedside manner of being a doctor with not dealing with all that blood and guts and broken bones and things like that? And I really gravitated to the relational aspect of psychology and building a relationship with somebody and allowing that relationship to grow and foster and develop, and having those challenges and also those successes being allowed to be analyzed and allowed to grow in a particular way.
In what ways do you establish trust with patients? Like when a patient first comes in, obviously you're a stranger to them, but they're seeking help. What is the process of connecting with the patient and helping them do that difficult work?
So in psychology, we call that the therapeutic alliance. And what that means is the relationship between the clinician and the patient or the client. Or if you're working with children, you're not only worried about the relationship that you have with the child, but you're also worried and concerned about the relationship you have with the family system. So the parents, the other siblings, it also then could extend to the teachers and the other community partners who are directly involved with the child. So a great way to do that is authenticity. Kind of let them know who you are and who you're not. So with children, what I tell them is, I'm here to talk about feelings and emotions. I'm not somebody who's going to give you medication because I'm not a psychiatrist.
Right.
I'm not going to lock you in jail or get mad at you if you get angry. But we're going to be curious and we're going to be brave about our emotions, and that's how we're going to start. And so non-judgmental and kind of having this positive regard for the kids that I work with, and the same thing for the adults too. Being really authentic about, this is what I can deliver and this is what I can't. I can't promise you that you'll never be sad again. I can't promise you that your next death in the family or breakup won't be that bad, but what I can promise you is we're going to help you get through those situations a lot more efficiently, in a healthier fashion, and with a lot more authenticity and a lot more honesty about how you feel and how that impacts your behavior and your thoughts and your feelings.
Do you usually experience a willingness from patients, or there is some resistance from clients that you've worked with?
I think a lot of people are actually nervous and concerned about getting better. I think they get so entrenched in their normal. So if their normal is depression, or if their normal social isolation or helplessness, they really get entrenched in that. And to think about climbing out of that cave and experiencing the world in a different fashion can be really overwhelming. So a lot of what I do is support them through that process so that they know that they can really be successful if they decide to make that change. And also give them small incremental steps towards change, as opposed to giant step after giant step after giant step. because we can all understand how that would be overwhelming for us. So I want to make it manageable, and that's what I really do with both adults and the children. Say, hey, let's take this piece by piece. We don't need to solve all the problems right away, but let's make slow, deliberate, concerted efforts to go towards progress. And as we make that progress, I can check back in with them and say, wow, remember 3 months ago, you couldn't have a conversation without getting anxious in public. Now look, you just had you gave a public talk in your class, or you just, ask somebody to dance at a concert or something like that. That's progress. And if you give them the opportunity to recognize that progress, they're more motivated to do so in the future.
So what kind of skills does it take for you to be a successful psychologist? Is it patience, or what type of skill set do you what are the skills you have found most useful, and where did they come from? Was it all from school that you learned these skills, or something outside?
That's a good question. I think patience is definitely a key skill. I think a sense of being able to adjust and react to situations. So for some people I work with, humor is really key, and we need humor to move the therapy forward. For other people, humor doesn't work, and you can't be funny.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to have that spectrum in how you behave and how you interact with people. I'm a different person for my child patients than I am for my adult patients, and I have to be able to feel comfortable in that. So it means a little bit of breadth of personality. But I think you also have to be able to feel the temperature in the room. I think we've all been in conversations and situations where we feel like the air gets sucked out of the room, or you feel that heat from like a really good night, and people are laughing and people are really in tune with each other. Being able to be that thermometer, that psychological thermometer, and see whether the room's getting cold or it's getting hot, and being able to adjust accordingly is really important. But I think that patience is key. In good therapy sessions, I actually won't talk that much, and I'll just kind of give little key words and suggestions that kind of move the person's thought along on a particular path that I may be dictating, or a particular path that was completely organic and came out of nowhere.
Interesting. Interesting. And do you feel lessons in patience? Did you learn that in school, or would you always describe yourself as a patient person, or do you feel like with the profession? Okay, that's interesting.
No.
That's interesting.
So I think I've been patient with myself. As a child, I had pretty bad speech language concerns. So I had to do speech therapy, and I had really bad asthma too. So there were a lot of times that I missed recess for speech therapy, or missed recess for asthma because the pollen was outside, or I couldn't breathe, or I didn't take my medication. So in those circumstances, I had learned patience. I wanted to be outside, but I had to keep my body still. I had to stay inside for my own safety and my own betterment if I was doing the speech language services. So in those times, I was able to stay patient by directing my attention towards something else. So if I had to be inside, I'm going to draw. Or if I have to do speech language therapy, I'm going to do it the best I can. So I can get something out of this time that I'm missing doing something else, as opposed to seeing it as wasted time. But with my patience, I really do feel like working that patience to understand how difficult it is, and how sacred the space is in the respect that I'm having conversations with people that they don't talk to anybody else about. And that these are words that are being uttered that may never have been uttered ever in life before. And I really have to hold that and really treat that as sacred. I think therapy really is a sacred space. So because of that, it deserves that patience. It deserves that respect. It deserves that time. Because we're asking people to make monumental changes in their life if they're going through an acute depression, or debilitating anxiety, or the loss of a loved one, or their own health crisis. How can I ask them to get through this quickly?
Right.
That seems so disingenuous and kind of inhumane to ask that.
So speaking of getting through things quickly, the training to become a psychologist is long. How different was your student life from now your clinical life? What has been the biggest difference between the two settings?
That made me think. Just to think about the process of grad school for psychology, there are these two tracks. You're learning about how to work with your patients and your clients, but you're also learning about yourself. Whereas if you're doing an MBA program, then I don't know the level of self-reflection that you have to do. So I think that self-reflection really helps you develop and really analyze the areas of your life where you need work for yourself, and also how those areas and your identities may rub off or influence positive or negatively the people you work with. So my ability to recognize I am a man, I am a tall, imposing man, I am a person of color, how does that rub off on people? How would that impact a 5-year-old little boy who looks like me, who can see this big kind of hulking person standing in front of him? And how does that influence what they feel comfortable saying, what they don't feel comfortable saying, and how we move the therapy along? So I really do think about that. When I step into the room, what do I give away? What are people taking from my appearance? And then given that information, how do I then agree with what they perceive? Or how do I then work to kind of dismantle the prejudices or potential stereotypes that might inhibit the treatment?
And can you give me an example of a way that, have you actually encountered that in your process where being a person of color has made someone be uncomfortable? For sure.
One of the things that I really do kind of lean on is the fact that I am a male, right? And a lot of the kids I work with, unfortunately, don't have positive male role models. So if nothing else, the most important thing for me to be is a non-offending, safe, emotionally intelligent, emotionally aware male, so that I can then be a restorative, reparative figure for people who haven't had those types of experiences. So for instance, I'm working with a lot of 8 to 12-year-old boys. I have a lot of anger management concerns, and they may have seen people in their community, males in their community, utilize anger in a particular way, and they might show that anger in aggressive means. But if they see me in the office, I can talk about times that I got angry, and show them how I distilled that anger into a productive resource, how I felt those feelings, and I didn't hit anybody, I didn't hurt myself, and I didn't do anything to disrespect myself, my name, my family, or my community.
Right.
And I think that that's really important. In terms of as an African American male or person of color, I recently wrote an article about it, how after a family session, we were going to get another family member involved in the session, and one of the parents said, right as she left, she was leaving the parking lot, "Oh, don't worry, I told my daughter that you were black." And it was this weird throwaway comment for her that it seemed like she was trying to give me a sense of security and understanding, but it was very confusing to me because in my life I've never had to warn anybody that I was black.
Wow.
And so this was in grad school. I got a lot of supervision around it, but it was a situation where I was like, that's right. Therapy's not a closed environment. It's permeable to race and prejudice and stereotyping. And from that point on, I was really able to acknowledge, okay, this is what I bring into the room. I bring in my race for better or for worse. And there are also opportunities where I can capitalize on that, where I can speak a certain language to certain types of people and get that buy-in. And now we're off and running.
Right.
Whereas if they see somebody else walk into their room, they go, oh, here we go again. This is going to be somebody who has the potential to misunderstand me, somebody who has the potential to offend me. Microaggressions might be here, but they see me and they know me and they say, give him a little test, see how he is with the lingo or with the music or with the culture, and if you pass that test, now you're in. You have that access.
Wow, that's incredible, and also quite necessary. And in the 3 minutes that we have left, I know in your training, in your schooling, did you encounter a lot of other people of color in your programs, or was it a little bit more isolating than that? Because I know with faculty, there's a little bit of a disparity between white and color faculty.
It was a pretty solitary experience. So the stats on psychology, I think it works out to be about 3 to 5% of psychologists are African Americans.
Oh, wow.
So let's take the typical 100 people.
Yeah.
So let's say there are 5 African Americans.
Yeah.
And then you take those 5 African Americans and we say how many are male and how many are female.
Right.
It's overwhelming majority are female.
Right.
So let's say 3 females, 2 males.
Right.
Then we say of those 2 males, how many of them work with children? So most African American male psychologists work with adults.
Okay.
So then that would probably leave 1 if we're lucky. So in terms of being an African American male, that's a psychologist that works with kids.
Yeah.
It's a very isolating experience.
Okay.
But I see it as a very rewarding thing because I can be a role model and dress professionally and be able to use my credentials to give access and advocacy for people who don't have a voice yet.
Yeah.
And really giving them the opportunity to say, hey, this profession is available to you if you want it.
Exactly.
Just go out and get it.
Well, thank you so much for paving the way and joining us this evening. We have run out of time, and where can we go and purchase your book?
You can purchase it on Amazon.com.
Okay, check us out on Amazon.com. And yeah, thank you for paving the way, and I hope that through your work you're able to enable more students to overcome those obstacles so they can really fulfill their purpose, because anxiety can get in the way, depression can really get in the way. And
For sure.
yeah, I thank you so much.